Hello, my name is Jessica Baker. I am in EDEX 323, and I am going to talk about my learning strategy that I chose for this lesson. So, for this lesson, I chose advanced organizers. There are many different types of advanced organizers depending on what type of information you are introducing to students. So, advanced organizers are a really great collaborative tool that can help students work together to complete the task. It facilitates a deeper understanding of concepts. Um, why I like this type of learning strategy is it really helps break down large, broad concepts into more manageable pieces of information, especially for the more complex topics that have a lot that go into it. So I thought about the advanced organizer I wanted to use, and the one I ended up choosing was the concept map or concept definition map. These maps really help the students gain a deeper understanding about the topic. And the topic I chose for this lesson was the six essential nutrients. And there are a few other activities that play into nutrition, learning about how much sugar we're consuming in our diets, and also learning about the requirements that the government recommends for the daily diet, as far as portion sizes of fruits, vegetables, grains, and things like that. So, what I wanted to focus the learning strategy on, though, were the six main essential nutrients that are needed for our proper bodily functions. And why I thought about a concept map is I know that students know what carbohydrates are, what proteins are, minerals, vitamins, but I didn't know if they truly understand how much goes into each one of those essential nutrients. For example, lipids or fats. There are a lot of different examples. There are many different functions that they play in our bodies. So I don't want students to just think of lipids equals fats and that's it. Um, so basically, what the part of this lesson with this learning strategy is going to help is kind of break these nutrients into more manageable pieces of information, so students can have a broader understanding of what these nutrients do for our body. So um, another reason I picked this, especially for English language learners or English language learners with special needs, is that concept maps can really help visual learners. And I feel as students that are learning English, especially students that are learning English with special needs, these maps can really help them visualize the concepts. It makes these broad topics more manageable. It helps if we chunk large amounts of information, and it's also a collaborative activity too. So the students that are learning English can work together with students in their group and create this visual representation of the concept instead of just listening to a lecture or watching a video. So I really thought that this learning strategy would help kind of break these big chunks of information down into something that's a little bit easier to understand. And then the students are left with a visual representation of each nutrient. So it's really great for the visual learners and especially for the learners that are learning English at the same time. So the example of the learning strategy that I put into this lesson was, um, before we get into the learning strategy part of the lesson, there are two other activities that we have completed. The first one is the students are filling out a map of a plate that has different sections broken up into, where they had to label fruits, grains, vegetables, dairy. They had to guess how many portion sizes they should be consuming daily according to their activity level. And then we revealed the actual amounts. So that was the first part to kind of get them engaged and interested. And then I went into just a fun activity about sugar and how it affects our bodies and how much sugar we're actually consuming. So there's a slideshow that goes with that. I had physical sugar in front of them, and when every slide would come up with, let's say, a chocolate milk, I would show them how much sugar that chocolate milk contains by pouring it into a container, and they can really visualize how much sugar they're consuming. And then after that, what I really wanted to get into was keeping the students in the same group they were in for the sugar activity. So groups of 3. So they're already going to be broken into groups. Um, if I have the English language learners in that session, then those are going to be put into groups with stronger students that I know would be able to help those students if they needed a little bit of extra support. Um, so the students will be in groups of 3. This um, learning strategy with the concept map does rely on the students using their textbook to find this information to fill out the maps. And because there are 6 essential nutrients, the students will receive 6 concept maps each, 1 map for each nutrient. So they will work together, starting with whichever nutrient they would like, and finding I can show you this real quick, and it is going to be attached to this presentation as well. But it basically asks you for the main concept. So basically, for example, carbohydrates. They're going to have to find the definition of carbohydrates. They're also going to have to find the functions or the properties of carbohydrates, what they do for our body. So there are a few boxes there that they will have to find that. So instead of just saying carbohydrates give us energy, they're going to have to actually find in the textbook what those carbohydrates do. And then lastly, at the bottom, there's room for examples. So what are examples of carbohydrates? And I don't want them to just write, just from memory, bread, pasta, grains. There are a lot of different things out there that are examples of these nutrients that maybe students don't know that they are those. Another good example are the lipids, the fats. There's probably students that don't know that there are good fats and bad fats. There are fats that come from nuts and seeds, not just butter, oil, things like that. So that is the main part, the lesson that involves the learning strategy. They will fill those out completely. They'll be working with their groups. I will also be walking around at that time to make sure that they are filling out those maps thoroughly and correctly using the textbook, not just guessing, because those concept maps are then going to turn into study guides essentially for a multiple choice quiz that I would give, the week after that involves asking questions about the 6 essential nutrients, making sure they understand what are examples of each of those nutrients, what roles do those nutrients play in our body. So if the students do not fill out the concept maps correctly, or they don't put forth a lot of effort into the concept maps, then they will struggle on the test. I did include an extension activity to kind of tie the concept maps together with the lesson, and you can find that in my lesson plan as well. But just essentially has the students finding actual real nutrition labels, seeing if there are any nutrients involved, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fats, having them think about whether that food choice was a healthy choice, a good choice, or maybe if there's something they should have chosen instead. Serving size, just having them actually starting to analyze and looking at what they are consuming, because it is very important. And I do include a video at the beginning of the lesson that talks about how the food we eat affects our brain, so our mood, everything. So it's a long lesson. Usually it takes about 2 days. The learning strategy part takes about, I would say, a good half hour, 30 minutes at least, for the students to fill out the concept maps. Students that struggle with learning disabilities, etc., will probably need more, closer to an hour. So that's why I like to have the lesson fall over the course of 2 days, just in case. So we leave time for the introductory My Plate government recommendations activity, the sugar activity where they can actually see how the sugar is affecting us, and then lastly ending with the 6 major nutrients. So that is what I am going to show in the demonstration, and I will wrap up at the end. All right. So everybody enjoy that sugar activity. Yeah, I always cannot believe how much sugar we actually are consuming on a daily basis. I think it's a little scary, but hopefully that opened your eyes a little bit to maybe some better choices that we could make instead of what we do. So for this next activity, we're going to stay in our same groups. You're already in groups of 3. That works out perfectly for what we're going to be doing. We learned about the requirements that we should be incorporating into our diet, the different portion sizes. We learned about sugar, but now we're going to actually talk about nutrients, essential nutrients. You do consume these on a daily basis, whether you think you do or not. So does anybody know how many nutrients there are? There are a number of essential nutrients. Anybody want to take a guess? 8? It's a little too high. Anybody have any other guesses? Yeah, 6. Yes, perfect. So yes, there are 6 essential nutrients. Does anybody want to throw out any guesses of which nutrients those are? Um, so I'm not really thinking about calories and things like that. I want you to think of the things that are very essential to our body production. So yes, vitamins, perfect. Vitamins, there's a lot of different types of vitamins. Anything else? Yes, fats, that is a good one. We're actually going to classify that as lipids. That is kind of the more scientific term, but yes, that's a good one. Anybody have anything else? What, if you're like a bodybuilder, you really consume a lot of this? Protein, perfect. So yeah, there are 3 more. We'll pull up the vocabulary here on the screen. We'll go through each one and kind of I have some images to help you also connect. Okay, so we looked at the screen with all of the vocabulary. Okay, so now what we're going to do is you are going to go with your group of 3. You do need your textbook. You are going to basically fill out something called a concept definition map. And what this concept definition map is going to do is it is going to help you basically break something down like vitamins, like minerals, that have a lot to it. There's a lot of information that goes along with, let's say, vitamins, right? So what this activity is going to help us with is kind of breaking down these really big topics into something a little bit more manageable. So what you're going to do, and I'm going to bring up the example on the screen here. Can everybody see that? Okay. So this example, basically, I used the example of milk. Okay, so there's obviously a lot that can go into milk as a dairy product. You're going to define the nutrient, okay? And then as you can see over in my examples, the properties, what makes up milk. So if you're doing something like proteins, your book is going to tell you what proteins are made of, what do they consist of. And what I also would like you to put over in this side is the functions. So what function does protein, we'll say, play in our body, okay? Because I don't want you to just know that protein is meat and cheese and beans and things like that. I want you to know what that protein actually does for our body, okay? Why is it an essential nutrient? Well, it does this, okay? So over here on the right where it says properties, I want you to think of that as properties or function. You know, what function does that nutrient play in our body and why it's so important that we make sure we consume that. Lastly, at the bottom, I would really like you to fill out the examples, okay? So there are boxes here at the bottom. Perfect example again, lipids, aka fats. Maybe you don't know that you know, almonds, cashews, avocados, those are really good sources of fat. You know, maybe you wouldn't think that, but I don't want you to think of fat as just, you know, butter, oil, things like that. So these maps are going to help you kind of visualize what makes up each one of these nutrients. So that means because there are 6 essential nutrients, you will need 6 completed maps. You're going to do 1 map per nutrient. Yes, you are each going to complete a map for each nutrient. So even though, that's a great question, even though you're in groups of 3, you're each going to do 6 maps, okay? So you're not just gonna do carbohydrates, you're not just gonna do proteins. You're gonna leave today or tomorrow, depending on how long it takes you, with a map for yourself for each nutrient. Oh, that's also another good point and question. Yes, there is going to be a quiz on these nutrients, what roles they play in our body, and examples of each, most likely next week. So that is why it is really important that you fill these concept maps out thoroughly, correctly. So I don't want you to just think, oh, carbohydrates, that's bread, that's pasta. No, that's not what I'm looking for here. I am looking for, you know, the properties, the functions of those carbohydrates, then giving me good examples that the book has for you. Everything you need is in the textbook, okay? If you are struggling to find, if you're struggling to find these answers, you're not sure, you know, where you should be looking, please raise your hand or, you know, utilize those groups that you're in to your advantage. That's why this is a group project. Obviously, you could do it on your own, but I would really like you to kind of use that, your partners, to your advantage so you can make sure that maybe they caught something that you didn't see, okay? So you can kind of think of it as a search and find. It is a collaborative activity here, so you are working together. I do want you to kind of help each other out, okay? So are there any questions about the concept maps, you know, what I'm asking you to do? Yes, I'm going to give you 6 blank maps, and at the box where it asks for the main concept, okay, that's where you'll list the nutrient. So example, proteins. Then you're going to use your textbook, use your partners to help fill in the rest of the blanks. So I am going to go around, going to kind of make sure you're doing okay. All right. So take some time, give you some time here to start those concept maps, okay? "45 minutes later, give or take. Okay, so I want you to flip over your concept maps. Okay. Can anyone out there list all 6 essential nutrients needed for our bodies to function properly? You think you got it? Good. Yep. Good. Yes. Great. Great job. What do you think would happen if you don't consume enough of these 6 essential nutrients in your diet? Yes, you're not going to feel great. You probably will be deficient, need to supplement with, vitamins, minerals, which are part of the essential nutrients. So it would be better, right, to get those essential nutrients from what? Yes, exactly. From eating the food that the nutrients, that the food that contain those nutrients. Um, 3 people, give me a sentence of something new you learned from this lesson. Great. Yep. You probably are not getting enough of these nutrients. These nutrients seem bad on the outside sometimes. Yes, exactly. That's a great point. The thing I like to always give the example of is fats. People think fats are bad, you should not be eating a lot of fat, but there's good fats, there's bad fats. So, now that we broke down the lipids, the fats that are essential for our bodily functions, you have seen now that the fats are essential for lubricating our organs and our joints. Is there anything for what we learned today with the entire lesson that has kind of changed your viewpoint with your personal diet? Yeah, you probably should not be drinking as many iced teas, Red Bulls. Anything you will change about your diet? Try to get a more balanced diet. That is a great one. And that's what I was hoping that My Plate activity was going to help you visualize is, oh man, like I definitely am not eating as many vegetables as I should every day, or I am eating way too much grains and dairy for me only working out not even a half hour every day. So yes, exactly. Great job, great thoughts. You are going to use these concept maps and that My Plate diagram to study for it'll be a short multiple choice quiz on the nutrients and My Plate requirements, probably take at some point next week. But like I said, fill these concept maps out and those are your study guides. So make sure you take your time, make sure you work together with your partner so you can create yourself some really nice visual study guides. Okay, sound good? Okay, so take some more time. Make sure you get those filled out completely before you leave today. And if you have any other issues, just please let me know. Okay, so with teaching high school, you do want to kind of let them go and really try to find this information. I do feel that when students have to kind of search and find, they do a much better job at retaining that information rather than just putting it up on the screen. So for this activity, I do kind of let them go for a good amount of time to make sure that they find the information themselves or they help each other. And that's why I think this lesson is great for ELLs or ELLs with special needs because it allows the students that are a little bit stronger to aid in helping those students that maybe have a little bit more difficulty breaking down these large amounts of information. And these concept maps, like I talked about earlier, are a great way to chunk that information into a little bit more manageable, instead of just saying the 6 essential nutrients, listing them, listing examples. These concept maps will break it down and help them understand why they are the essential nutrients. And it helps them with a visual example instead of just sentences copied down from their textbook. So um, hopefully presentation made sense and fit all the requirements for this presentation. Thank you.